A concertgoer could really be forgiven for thinking that Max Bruch is a one-work wonder. Well, he wasn't a one-work wonder, but there's only one piece of his that we ever encounter with any regularity in concerts today, and that's his famous G minor violin concerto, his first violin concerto. In fact, he wrote a lot of music, and much of it is excellent and fully worthy of revival. And he wrote another piece for violin and orchestra, his Fantasy, on Scottish themes, the so-called Scottish Fantasy of Max Bruch from 1880. From 1880 to 83, Max Bruch was director of music in Liverpool, and he became fascinated during that time with all things English, and his interest extended north to Scotland as well. And so it was that in writing this Scottish fantasy, he drew inspiration from traditional Scottish folk tunes. Now, he drew inspiration from them the same way that Brahms drew inspiration from folk music, which is that he often started by quoting the folk melody, but then he allowed his own originality to develop the tune in a certain direction. So the themes are not verbatim quotations of any Scottish tune, and yet they allude to them, and they're similar enough that our minds jump to some of these melodies as sounding terribly familiar. Well, this was a very famous piece in its time and a favorite composition of violinists. Many of the great violinists of an earlier era included this as a prime piece in their repertoire. In fact, the person who played the premiere of this piece was Pablo de Sarasate, the great Spanish violinist. And then the second violinist who took it up was Joseph Joachim, Brahms's own violinist. And then one of the other great early figures who played it was Eugène Ysaÿe, the Belgian virtuoso. Ysaÿe actually chose this Scottish fantasy of Max Bruch to introduce himself to New York audiences when he played it with the New York Philharmonic.